Welcome, everybody. We're uh, we're off to a good start already, and so happy to have Anne with us. And she will be doing two reflections for us now, and along with the writing segment. And so we're very pleased about that. And she's going to tell us about her method and about her books that she's written. So I'm really looking forward to that. And thank you so much, Anne, for coming.
Okay. My name's Anna Willman, and just briefly, I've been focusing since 1983. I've been writing all my life. I do a series of seminars from time to time called Writing from Your Body, which actually I aim at writers who are not necessarily focusers, but so I've done it with focusers as well. I have written a book about a program that I worked in for women in transition, and a program that I introduced focusing into, and I wrote a book about that also. And I have written 4 novels, 6 novels, and a short story. The short story is called Virgins in Paradise, and it's about what happens when a terrorist who's blown up some people goes into the afterlife expecting to be surrounded by virgins. And it's a blasphemous comedy that attacks all religions equally, I hope. The book that I wrote that I want to talk to you about is called Kaleidoscope. And is that backwards? No, it's
No, we can see it.
okay. I wonder if any of you have read this book oh, you have, Jim. Nice. Anybody else? Liz? A little bit of it. Okay. Well, not very many. I don't want to necessarily give things away, but it's a story about a woman with DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, or more familiarly known as multiple personalities. And it's done a little differently because it's done mostly from the inside of her, where all the different personalities interact inside her. And it's based on personal experience, in the sense that I had a roommate for 6 or 7 years who had many personalities. It was like having a whole lot of roommates, and sometimes more than one at a time. And so I have experience knowing what it's like to live with somebody with that, and also to focus with somebody like that. So that's the basis of that. And I tend to write from my own experience as much as possible. When I write successfully, at least I do. When I'm less successful, it's not that way. This book, Kaleidoscope, came out of, I said, of that experience of that roommate. And I wrote the first 40 pages or so, and I got stuck. And those 40 pages just sat in my computer for years because I didn't know where it was supposed to go. And then I was at a writers' conference, and I was sitting in an audience, and I suddenly thought, duh, focusing. I'm a focuser. And I think the person was even saying, write with what you know. So what I did is I didn't want to get into the abuse that led to it in detail. I wanted to deal with the healing, and that was what I was thinking when I suddenly realized, well, focusing. So I gave her a focusing oriented therapist. And um, and it was very interesting because the way that I write, and this is what I want to give you a little taste of today, is when I'm developing a character, I focus as that character. I go for whatever felt sense that character has. The character may not be aware of the felt sense. They may be acting out from a unrecognized felt sense. We all know people who do that. Or it may be recognizable. So when in this book, when I was writing it, um, I had to have a lot of different. If you do parts work, you might get, that might give you an idea of what it was like. Each part has a different body felt thing for you, and also in a way for itself. And so did that way. Another book I wrote called Loose Ends um, has a character in it who is a sociopath or psychopath, maybe. There are little differences between the different nuances between them. And after I wrote that book, I knew I never wanted to do that again, because really feeling the felt senses of a psychopath is really painful. At least for me, it was extremely painful. By the time I was through with writing that book, I never wanted to write another murder story or anything ever again, because the focusing was so difficult. But it's a pretty good story. Um, so that's basically how I write. And my books are strong in character. The plots are somewhat weaker. Um, I don't have a whole book plotted out before I go. I let the characters and the felt senses of the characters direct the plot. They find their own way forward through whatever. So usually what I just start with is a brief character um, and situate. I have a character with a sort of an idea of it and a situation. And that's where I start writing from. And I have no idea what's going to happen. That's why I got stuck at the 40 pages. I had no idea how I was going to help her get better. What I'd like to do is read let's see it. Read from the beginning of the Loose Ends book, which is like 3 short paragraphs that started when I was doing a bunch of exercises. I gave myself, I have to write 5 beginnings of a novel. 5 interesting beginnings, starting with a character and a situation. And this is the one that actually turned into a novel. But let me just read this. Amy Lynn Walker was 11 years old when she witnessed her first murder. The day she turned 14, she saw her 10th. You might say by then, in matters of murders, Amy Lynn Walker was something of a connoisseur. The hard part was not being able to talk about them. She made that mistake once when she was only 12 and told her best friend Charlene that her mother was a professional hitman. Poor Charlene and her big sister Nancy Jean became numbers 5 and 6. Amy Lynn still felt bad about that, but as her mother said, some lessons you just have to learn the hard way. And so that's the beginning of the novel with a serial killer in it. The serial killer is the mother, and it's a really teenage coming of age story when the mother tries to get Amy Lynn to take over the business, and she'd rather be a marine biologist. So from that, you can probably tell there's a certain amount of humor in my books. Um, but that's all I had. And I had that for quite a long time too, because I was a little nervous about stepping into the soul of a serial murderer. And I was right to be wary of it, but it came out a good. It's my second favorite novel. Kaleidoscope is my favorite. I think that's as much as I need to say right now. I'd like you to ask questions, or opinions or whatever. And if you've read my book, you might have some questions about that, whatever. And if nobody has any questions, I can fill the time in, but I'd rather hear from you. Meg,
I have two questions. One, fact, are they all published under your name, Anna?
yes,
Okay.
Anna Willman, yeah.
And second, when that was preposterous. 13 A Connoisseur of Murder. I loved it. So when and you said this kind of, do you, when you're writing, do you like become, you say you become the character? Are you like grimacing and moving, and or are you?
Well, I'm a more sedentary sort of person, but I mean, I pause, I go inside, I see what Amy Lynn is feeling. She doesn't understand focusing at all, but she reacts, and this is her, like, this is sort of like a prologue to book. It's that became the beginning of the book, but the first chapter starts right after that. And and she's grown up with murder being just part of her experience. It seems normal to her. And it's not something she likes particularly, and something she wanted to talk about. I could feel there was in her an uneasiness about it, maybe, but not really questioning it. Just like, if your parents have a quirk, you don't realize what it is, and then but as you get older, you start to notice that doesn't seem like everybody else or whatever. And so so I went into that. And what happened is I was just hunting for a first line for something, and I came up with that. She was 11 years old when she witnessed her first murder. And then I sat with what that would feel like at 11.
So Anna, I wanted to ask another question. I was shocked when you got to like the fifth line and mom's the murderer. And that I was shocked because it's so unusual. Maybe this is the first murderer, conscious hit woman that I've ever met. Was it hard? I mean, that's kind of a huge stereotype violation. Was that harder to write or funnier or?
Well, actually, I know someone. I had a roommate and also a sister who I believe fit in the sociopath, not psychopath. They're not murderers or anything, but they are totally, their whole world revolves around themselves.
Oh, okay.
The kind of person who, when she hears that you had a really bad weekend, says, well, if it's any consolation, I had a wonderful weekend. That's so I knew, I like I said, I wrote from what I know. I know what it's like to live with people who are so self-absorbed and can actually be maliciously self-absorbed. So I had that experience. So it was quite natural for me to make it her mother rather than her father, because these were both women. And they say 1 out of 25 people actually are sociopathic. So it's not a small number of people. I mean, they often are very successful businessmen, um, uh, politicians, um, preachers. They like positions where they have some sense of power and control to make up for the uneasy sense that something in the is missing in them. So,
So Anna, hi Anna, it's Monica.
oh, there you are. Hi.
Yeah. So I heard you say that 40 pages in you got stuck. I don't know if it's this novel, but like wondering how am I gonna heal her or how am I gonna help her heal? Is that right?
Well, I had no plot idea. I just wanted to try to communicate to the world what it is like to be a multiple personality as I understood it from somebody who knew one very closely, and how many odd things happen in your life when, you know, at any moment a 5-year-old could come out in your 35-year-old body and want to play with all the stuffed animals and the shelves at Fred Meyer, for example. Um, it I had all this wonderful experience in knowing, and I wanted to share that. Um, but I didn't know where to go with it. Once I got that start. And that's frequently the case with me. I had no idea where Amy Lynn's story was going to go. And that's why it sat around for a while, because it just sort of seemed like it would catch people's attention. But then where do I take it? So what I do is the felt sense guides me. I mean, like our felt senses always have a next step. And so like um, in the loose ends story with Amy Lynn, um, she's trying to figure out a way to get out of this system. And there's a person who feeds them the murders. There's some people they're supposed to murder. And that person seems to have a lot of power. And so Amy Lynn's trying to figure out who it is. I didn't know who it was. I had no idea. But I
Uh,
just sort of kept following it. And then there were several possibilities. And then it was suddenly clear to me which one it was.
mm,
It's
thank
really,
you.
yeah.
I want to stay on that though. My question, which is, you said, how am I going to heal her? How is she going to get healed? And I heard you say that, Anna.
I did say that. You're right. I did say that. And it was, and it's interesting to me that I didn't know how it was going to happen. And I think it may be because I was searching inside her for how it was going to happen instead of inside me. So in that way, it didn't quite work. The minute I looked at me, what do I know about how, well, I knew how my friend had gotten better. My roommate had gotten better. Um, uh, and focusing became an important part of it. Once she stopped being scared of focusing, she was very scared of focusing to begin with. Anything in the body meant torment to her because of how she had been raised. So she was afraid that she wouldn't get out of the body. And it wasn't until I had an experience with somebody who started to reenact being raped while I was companioning her, and I said, wait a minute, that's not what we do. We don't reenact these things. That's not focusing. And stopped the session, and the person came right out instantly. And when I shared that with my roommate, she said, oh, okay, I think I could focus now. And I was telling her, maybe you were right not to focus, because this is the first time in my experience I had somebody go someplace they weren't really ready to deal with. And certainly I wasn't ready to deal with it. To sit there and watch her be raped, without, that's not my idea of focusing. And so then when she found that I could pull her out, then she was willing to try focusing. And then she got a focusing partner and focused many years with the focusing partner and integrated quite a lot of, not all, but quite a lot of herself. So I even had that example of it, and I still didn't get it, until because I was going into the mini selves inside and sitting with their felt senses instead of paying attention to my own. So I learned from that you need to also step outside and connect with your sense of where things go. Thank you. That's a great question.
I'd like to
Yes.
ask something.
Yeah, Liz.
You want to go ahead? I see it.
Oh, okay. Pauline, is that?
I know. I saw Liz's hand up there. Good morning or afternoon, this neck of the woods. Yeah, I'm sorry I came in late, but I'm fascinated. I just have I heard about Amy Lynn and a fictional character. That's what you call it, or she was, and I'm kind of wondering, where does the healing? Like, I presume she's a figment of your imagination. Did I miss something very important?
Well, there's two different books, and the multiple personality one, the character's name is Karen. And Amy Lynn is in the novel about the sociopath. So she's the daughter of the serial killer. And Liz, you had your hand up.
Yes, this is very, very interesting. So first of all, thank you. You're talking about knowing people like this and getting inside yourself. And I'm wondering, and you said that it was worrisome, and I'm just wondering what it was like for you to have some form of resonance. I don't know if we could go so far as to call it identification, but some form of resonance that compelled you to write about those people, a sibling and someone else. But once you're in it so much and focusing on it and writing it, were you aware of, I don't know, to be trite, the serial killer within yourself? And what was that
No,
like?
it's interesting. I had to really hold a safe space around me in order to go to their very unsafe space. The what I found inside was mostly fear. Fear of being different from other people, fear of people finding out I was different from other people, or the character was different from other people. Knowing that confusion that comes from being different, but not really understanding the difference. Not being able to, I'm different in this way and that way, but feeling people seem to be able to connect with each other in ways that I don't know how to connect, or I have to look at other people and see how they behave so I can behave in a way that nobody will discover who I really am. That kind of thing. And what's interesting is I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, and we started a political conversation discussion group where people could talk across divides. And when we were first planning it, somebody said, "Oh," she said, this is such a good idea. I would really love to get inside Donald Trump's mind." And I had just finished writing this book. And I felt such repugnance. I said, well, I sure don't. I don't want to get in his mind. And then I thought about it afterwards, and I thought, that's so not me. But I was so, I had, it had been so hard for me to be in this character's way of being, and that I just couldn't go anywhere near anybody like that again. Not certainly not right then, because it was all still fresh in my experiencing, because that was about the time I was finishing that book. And it really, it was in many ways a really fun book to write, and it was in many ways a really painful book to write.
So just to continue, you really didn't identify with the aggression, having chosen the most aggressive kind of person to write about. It,
Yeah.
on some level, it stayed other for
Yes,
Yeah.
it did. It did. I had to hold a part of myself out of it. It was just that sense of being so wrong, you know, so unacceptable to others.
but in a
So
non-aggressive way when you were thinking of yourself.
yeah,
But I just find it really interesting. I wrote a murder mystery once upon a time, and I mean, I got in there with the killing as well as the analyzing the killer, you know, but I did not exempt myself emotionally from that aggression that produced the murders. That was me too.
you know, I was part of a writers group, and they were all better murderers than me. All of my murders, as I wrote them, were flawed. And my said, well, wait a minute, they'll have public cameras there. You can't do it that way, or whatever. So I had to have a lot of help with the murders in the book. Just simply because it there was, I don't have that a creative knack in that area. I can't, I really admire people who write murder mysteries that can come up with, because I love reading them. I mean, I get pleasure out of reading other people's murder books, but I really had a hard time killing people. But I wanted to, I had learned a lot about how, I mean, the people that I knew who had that sociopathic trend were living in fear. They were reacting in fear, and their selfishness. My sister would rather look selfish than afraid. She wouldn't show anybody she was afraid. So if she missed something, she says, well, serves them right, instead of saying, oh, I didn't realize I, was hurting somebody's feelings. She owned the anger rather than the fear, but fear was underneath it. I could see it. I could sense it. It was like horrible, horrible. So, other questions?
I'm thinking, Anna, that in working with therapists, I've begun to have people focus on their inner client. So if the murderer was my client, and I'm developing and a more felt sense experience of that client, it's very similar to what you're doing.
I think that's probably true. Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting. I wasn't trying to heal my sociopath. I was trying to help her daughter escape. And I was dealing with the daughter's problem, which is that she loves her mother.
Mhm.
And I have experience in loving people who are sociopaths. I love my sister.
Mhm.
And at some point, I had to protect myself. So, yeah. See, even talking about about that is difficult.
Yeah. It does seem to be so key to all of us being able to live together and not be as polarized. You know, that we develop uh, a real felt sense of the other, and the more different the other is, you know, the more important it is to develop a felt sense
Yeah,
of,
I haven't stuck with a position that I would never want to know what is in Trump's mind. But at the moment, I was so raw from writing this book.
oh, of course.
It was like, oh no.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I am more curious right now on about what's going on in all the people who are following him so closely. All these politicians who at one point saw very clearly the man's failings and now are trying to make him be perfect. And that is a curiosity to me, that I could explore that, I suppose. And I certainly could if I was meeting with somebody who felt that way. My response would be mostly curiosity. But anyway, that was an interesting experience for me, going there as a writer and doing my thing, where I pretty good at developing a sense of um, what the character is feeling.
Mhm.
And this doesn't have to be just about character. I mean, if you're writing something to publicize a workshop, you can get for a felt sense of that workshop and what's important about that workshop and what's key, and then you write from that felt sense
Mm.
instead of just saying, oh, this is a workshop that does this and this and this. You say, wow, well, what's really important about this workshop? What do I love about it? How do I, what's my felt sense of this experience?
Mm.
And then so you can you can do reports that way too, annual reports of an organization. What is it that we did this year that is like magic for me? What's fresh and new and special? So,
It's
and
wonderful.
how do you feel it in your body? And then you can put it down on paper, and makes it powerful. And it does work for plotting too. Although I consider plotting my weakest thing, because I don't start with it. I let the characters take me there, and sometimes they meander a bit and I have to later go and cut things out or make the connections clearer or stuff. But it's interesting that I have yet to write a book. I've written 6 novels. I've yet to write a novel where I really know what's going to happen at the end. I know I have a situation, and the situation, like the young girl being the daughter of a killer who, and it was fun to make the mother, sort of like ground her when she wouldn't commit a murder, or, you know, um, um, tell her to watch her language, you know, while they're discussing a murder. You know, the dual messages that were coming out. I'm your mother and you must obey me and be respectful and not lie to me, and you know, all these kinds of morals built around somebody who's running around killing people. It was a that's what I mean by it was fun to write too. It was delightful to see the ironies and the things like that.
I wanted to ask you to get back to something you said about your sister, maybe your characters also, that you had to protect yourself from your sister, had to learn to protect yourself. I'm just wondering about the in-between part. You know, the way we tend to hide from from what's real with a sibling's character that is very threatening. And I just wondered if that was your experience, how I'm thinking maybe focusing could help with that sort of ladder down into what really happened. You know, what made that need to protect yourself so strong? There had to be a series of knowings that happened, like almost a hierarchy of knowings and inner truthfulness. And that's where I get stuck. My protective piece is so on top so much of the time that it is really hard to get underneath and what's real. And I spent even writing a memoir where my sister is a part of it. Like I notice going back, looking at it, that it's just the surface that I'm touching. It's so hard to get down there. So I'm just curious about your
Absolutely. If you can think of Lucy and Charlie Brown in the football, that's my relationship with my sister. I'm Charlie Brown. She holds the football. We can be besties, you know? And then poof, pulled
One
away
thing.
from.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one
Yeah.
that one. That's why that comment you said was so potent, you know, just one line and boom, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it started when we were really little. I mean, like, you know, the kind of thing like, and I mean, and this is a tiny thing, but she had a paper doll I loved. Mom gave us each a paper doll, and hers was so much cuter than mine. And I loved it. And she didn't want it. She didn't like it anymore. She didn't want it anymore. And so I said, "Oh, can I, if you don't want it, can I have it?" And she looked at me and she ripped it in two. And
Well,
that happened my whole life. She took boyfriends from me. You know, it was like, not because she liked them or wanted them, but because she could. That kind of thing. So I experienced it for years. And I watched it, and I would distance myself from her, and then I would get sucked back in, and I would distance myself from her and get sucked back in. I lead a workshop on estrangement because of my experience with that. And so I was well prepared to write about that kind of experience, and I always wanted to write a murder novel. My kudos to you, Liz. and and so this seemed the best way forward. I read up on things like sociopaths and psychopaths. There's a wonderful book called The Psychopath Next Door or something like that, if I remember correctly, the title. And it helped me understand what was going on with my sister
Mm.
and with my roommate. I saw her interactions with her children, and it was really horrible. Um, so I wanted to share. Mary Ann, I see your hand up. You've been waiting patiently.
Good morning, Ryan. This is somewhat of a disturbing conversation for me. I'm a sensitive person and I have certain reactions, and so I try to. So my question for you is, when you're getting in these characters, especially the things that I would find disturbing, what do you, how do you do, like you said, when someone said get into Trump's head and you're like, no, this is too fresh, like you were still recovering kind of, how do you, I guess to me that would impact your life if you aren't able to, like at the end of writing this segment here with this focusing on this person, like how do you clear your system of that so you can go forward in your day-to-day life? Or don't you? Or like how does that, if that's okay to ask?
Yeah, it is. I'm just checking to see what I did do. While I was writing that particular book, I did a lot of compartmentalization, I think. I think that was what I had to do.
Mm.
And at a certain point, I just wanted to hurry up and get through the book. It was like going on too long.
So
I think I wrote that one faster than any of my others.
So are you saying you set aside like that disturbed feeling of that, or that fear, or that you were able to set that aside and go
I
about
was
your
until
day?
that person said, when the person said, boy, would I love to get into Donald Trump's mind, I
brought it
had
back.
it compartmented up to the,
But it came
I-
back,
it just
resurfaced.
burst out of me, and I
Yeah.
just said, not me, I don't want to do that. I mean, I totally acted out the pain.
Okay. Yeah, that's,
So it
I
was
don't,
there. It was there. It was just sort of tucked away somewhere in what felt like a safe place.
well, I want to say, to me, I see you as brave, and you know, the experience you had as a child with your sister. As a child, you didn't know what was going on, I don't
Had no
think. I mean,
clue. Had no
so
clue.
how did you, you know, so how that impacted you is significant. Then being able to live with a roommate that was multiple personalities, it's probably a good opportunity for you to get some of this out, perhaps.
It's interesting. I knew this person was a multiple personality before I accepted her as a roommate,
Hmm.
and she was wonderfully open about it. And she was great. I mean, she is arguably insane, I suppose, but she's one of the sanest people I know. She
No,
takes
she's the
full
one you talked into
responsibility.
focusing.
I taught her focusing,
Okay.
yeah. But she takes full responsibility for any action any of her alters take. She explains to people what's going on for her in really clear language.
Mhm.
She went through the program that that I was the director of, which worked with women going through major life transitions. In the very first week that she was in that program, I gave her the floor, and she explained to people that she was multiple, and that sometimes different alters would come out, and she hoped that they would be patient with them. And the group adopted her. They adored her. Very powerful, honest, kind, caring person. I would say also, I want to say in terms of this book, very little in here is spent on what made this person multiple.
Right. Good.
It's really about the healing process.
That's good. Then I could probably read it.
So it makes it easier to read.
So now when she was real open about the personality disorder, was that before focusing? Or did the focusing help her to?
No, she couldn't focus. She wouldn't go near it. No, I can't do things that are in my body. I can't do things in
But
my body.
she was already open about the personality disorder before that.
She had
Okay.
been diagnosed and she understood it, and
Okay.
I mean, and a lot of the things that happened to my character, are things that happened to her, like the example in Fred Meyer. I mean, she was in Fred Meyer's store, and um in her 30s and doing grocery shopping, and then all of a sudden um she was a child and there were all of these stuffed animals, and she was gone, it was a child, and then all of a sudden she was, from looking at produce, the next thing she knew, she was sitting on the floor surrounded by stuffed animals with her legs out in front of her, and and the animals all there, and the security guard of the store standing over her looking at this 34-year-old woman on the floor with the toys, and with a very stern expression.
Hmm.
Things like that would happen to her. Um, and um, and she'd explain.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm thinking that we might do the
Yeah,
because our time is going fast. Um,
okay. What I was suggested doing, and if you want to continue the conversation instead, I wanted to suggest that I do a guided image, a thing sort of to guide you in, and you could take a character or a report or something that you were writing, and a few questions will be in the thing, and then you can go into breakout room and with pencil write, maybe just 3 or 4 sentences from it. Would you like to do that?
mhm.
Put your hand up if you would like to do it, and then we'll know. Okay, it sounds like people. Okay, so I'll be happy to do that then. And let me just get my notes. And I'll tell you before I start what the questions I'm going to ask you, if you want to write them down ahead of time. The first question is, what do you love about this character or situation or topic? What do you love about it? The second is, what is fresh and alive? The third is, what limitations are there? Fourth is, what is emerging or coming to an end? And then, what is the essential core? And then finally, can you think of a detail or instance that embodies that essential core?
Could you repeat the last question, please?
Yes. What can you think of an instance or a detail that embodies that essential? And then these are all felt sensing questions. And I'll ask them in the guide in, so that you can, when you go into your breakout room, you'll have that already pretty much done.
And the
And just
questions are in
jot
the
some
chat,
notes
too.
down. Pardon?
Questions are in the chat too, so they're
Oh,
written
good.
for everybody. Thanks to Liz.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so just let your body relax. Get comfortable position. We're going to go through this quickly because you're all pretty much experienced. Just let yourself surrender to the gentle tug of gravity. Feel the support underneath you, the support under your feet, your hands. Become aware of the rhythm of your breathing, the rise and fall of your body with each breath. Opening up and taking in a fresh breath filled with oxygen and life-giving energy. And then letting go, releasing air warmed by your body and rich with carbon dioxide to nurture the plants. Take a moment just to sense how just being alive is an interaction between you and the environment, you and the planet. The air is just right for your lungs. The air you release is just right for the planet. This is your home planet. This is where you belong. Now just sort of go into the center of your being and sort of pick something that you have been working on as a writer. Maybe a grant you're writing, maybe journal writing, maybe a story with characters and situations. And ask yourself first, what do I love about this character or situation? And then ask yourself, what is fresh and new about it? Fresh and alive. Are there any limitations? What is emerging or coming to an end? And sort of drawing from all of these questions, see if you can sense what is the essential core of this character or this situation or this writing that you're doing. What is the essence of it? And then maybe think of a detail or an instance, a situation that embodies that essence. We covered that all very quickly. But it's okay, you could skip any steps that you want if they don't feel like the right question. I guess I would say if you feel like a question is better for what you're doing, consider that question. Whatever feels right to you. Let your body tell you what's the key questions to be answered. And maybe just really make a space for it all and hold it gently with compassion and curiosity. Full attention to it. And then I guess we can go into breakout groups where you can take a few moments to write whatever still needs to be written and then share with each other what came up.
You know, I was trying to write a flyer for a workshop, and those questions helped me so much.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I can't claim them as my own. They're variations on some questions that Kai Nelson used when I took her Thinking at the Edge class. And she used them when we were working with clay. And then I have changed them, but I know that she said she got them from somebody else. And I think it's so much like how we do things in the focusing world, where
Absolutely.
when we discover something good, we find a way to spread it around and share it. And oh, take this. Anything I ever give people, I want them to take it and make it their own and change it however it works. And
Yes, me too.
yeah.
So welcome back, everybody. I hope that you had a good taste of this process, and would love to hear what happened in your breakout rooms.
I had a delicious taste, and I'm sitting here going, I want the whole meal. Like it was much.
Ah,
Mm.
well, in August, we're going to be focusing on writing the whole month. So that's our vacation project.
That's
Mm.
great. Look
And
forward.
I will be doing one of those August meetings. So yeah.
Great.
And also I for a while was doing a writing thing weekly on Focusing Initiatives International's free webinars, but I stopped because people stopped coming. So if people think they're interested in that, they could let me know. And I've been toying with the idea of starting it up again.
That
So
would be wonderful.
it's possible. I have poetry writing one, and I have one for journaling, a bunch of journaling assignments and things like that. There are a lot of different things that I can do. I have like a number of exercises.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think there would be a number of people who would love to be in a writing class or writing group. So anybody is welcome to say whatever whatever is on your mind. Yeah, Liz.
Well, what was on my mind even before the breakout rooms was that people were talking about how brave it is to get into difficult material and that it can be a catharsis. But I also wanted to just make a note about that when you're writing or doing any kind of art, and as you know, I'm writing a graphic memoir and I'm presenting that part 2 in August. That was a commercial. But that you're in control too. I just wanted to put that in, that you know, it's a way of making yourself not the victim, because ultimately you're not in control of everything, but it's your work. You're doing whatever you want in it. And for me, that is such a powerful part of writing and doing any art.
Yes, one of the things that is really true of this method for me of working with characters and creating characters and developing them is that I know any character I write is a facet of me. And so there I do have access to it. And so my sociopath is based a lot on the 2 sociopaths I know, but she's also me if I were a sociopath. That's the kind of sociopath I would be, I'm afraid. Oh,
Christine was asking me how therapists really fully develop their inner knowing of the client without being hurt. And I was saying that when you're focusing on a character or a client, or you're experiencing how that person is living in you, and then maybe you can get more insight about the person, because we're all much more similar than different. You know, we all have the same human experience. But your compartmentalizing, Anna, was very important. To the focusing helps us to find the safe space to be with that person or that part of ourselves. But then when the focusing is over, or you decided that's that's it for that day, then the rest of your life can be different.
yeah, the compartmentalizing can be unhealthy and it can be very healthy. Both. It has, you know, and so I didn't have to keep continuously. I mean, I had to compartmentalize while I was healing that part of me that had been wounded in the writing of the book. And as I healed it, then I was able to let go and not have to compartmentalize it so much. So it allows me to open up again. One of the things for me in listening as a listening companion is I have discovered that by just really paying close attention and following. And if I make prompts or something, it's drawn from what they've already said or shown to me. People think I'm really smart. And it's so much fun when somebody says, "You're so good at this. How did you know that I was feeling this way?" You told me. But it's one of the delights of focusing is that you don't really have to know everything. You just have to really pay close attention. And then be bold enough to say what you hear back and not worry about whether you got it right or wrong. Because if you get it wrong and they say, "No, that's not it at all," then great. They know it's not that. They can go and figure out what it is. It's better, it's a no's are just as valuable as yeses.
By the way, I think Susan's had her hand up a couple times, but it's mostly out of the frame.
Well, I was gonna, first of all, thank you, Anna. This is so stimulating. And somehow goes so deep. One of the things that you just said that is going very deep is you said something about being hurt. You had to, the writing of the novel was you were hurt through the writing and then had to heal that hurt. So would you want to say anything about that more?
Well, I guess I'm stuck in the middle of a novel right now. And partly because one of the characters is based on my mother. And I want her, it's sort of my way of helping my mother heal posthumously, sort of. I want her to have the benefit of focusing. And she would never have ever admitted she needed any kind of psychological help ever. But she was very fragile in a lot of ways and suffered a lot from it. And I want my character based on my mother to heal at least some. And it's part of a Regency novel. Every other novel I write is a Regency romance. So if any of you like romance novels, you can check them out too. They're the ones that sell actually better than my more literary novels. But so I'm writing her in a different era. I'm writing her in a historical era, and so there's no focusing in that world. But she does experience severe depression and then manic moments. I think looking back, I'm pretty sure my mother was bipolar. She went they used to just say she went from highs to lows all the time. That's what they said back in the 50s. They didn't say bipolar. But I don't think the pain is bad. I think the pain is part of a path towards healing. And certainly I learned a whole lot about my sister from the writing of Loose Ends. And some about my roommate. It was not the same roommate as in the other book, but some understanding of her that allowed me to feel some compassion for her. But I wasn't as interested in her as I was my sister in terms of the healing piece. My sister died about a year ago. And I have discovered to my joy that me being released from my fear of being asked to kick the football one more time allows me to really get in touch with how much I loved her in a deeper way than I could before, when I had to keep protecting myself from letting that love lead me into kicking that football again. So now I don't have to worry about that happening. She can't hurt me anymore. So I can really look at the art. She was an artist and she did wonderful artwork. And I can appreciate her artwork and remember the fun that we had before she pulled the football away without resentment about, it's freed me from the anger and the resentment and the fear and that came from living with her, and allowed me to enjoy the good things about living with her. And it's been really wonderful for me to just uncomplicatedly love her.
I'm realizing that we're overtime here. and
Oops.
Want our poem. Thank
Sorry.
you so much, Anna. Thank you. And Dorothy has our poem.
Yes. Yes, and as Anna said, this is a love poem by a wonderful poet, Kenneth Patchen. 23rd Street runs into heaven. You stand near the window as lights wink on along the street. Somewhere a trolley taking shop girls and clerks home clatters through this before supper Sabbath. An alley cat cries to find the garbage can sealed. Newsboys begin their murder into pennies round. We are shut in, secure for a little, safe until tomorrow. You slip your dress off, roll down your stockings, careful against runs. Naked now, with soft light on soft flesh, you pause for a moment, turn and face me, smile in a way that only women know who have lain long with their lover and are made more virginal. Our supper is plain, but we are very wonderful.
Oh, wow. That's a very sensual poem, isn't it?
It is. I love it. It has a pause in it, which makes it good for
Yes.
focusing.
Right.
And Kenneth Patchen was a very passionate writer. He wrote passionately angry poems as well as passionate love poems. His wife, Miriam, all of his poems are dedicated to her. They had a long marriage and she supported him while he wrote poetry without getting any money from or much money from it most of his life. And so she made his huge output possible. And I think he's just an amazing poet. And he wrote in the 30s and 40s and I think in the 50s a little bit, but a lot of the poems he wrote were in pre-World War II or the pre-World War II era, when things were going on in Germany that parallel some things that are happening in the United States today. And so I think those poems, the anger in them reflects a lot of anger that people feel today too.
Thank you so much. And we're going to have a planning meeting for the planning committee at 10 o'clock. And we'll see you back the last in July or the beginning of August, Anna. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.